This unit's listening skill is making inferences. We make inferences almost every day of our lives in a variety of ways. Imagine someone comes into the classroom with their clothes and hair dripping wet. You don't know what the weather outside is, but you can make an inference just by looking at them that it is probably raining outside. So inferences are guesses based on evidence that we hear or see or are told directly by someone else. So making an inference just means to draw a conclusion about information that is not stated directly by using information that you may already know or that is stated directly. Making inferences while listening can help deepen your understanding of what you hear. For example, if you overheard a student talking about meeting his professor for the first time, and he said, "When I first met my professor, he shook my hand firmly and then asked me questions about myself. He was very polite. He also was relaxed and seemed interested in what I was saying." Do we know if the student likes the professor or not? We can probably make an inference that even though the student does not state directly what his first impression of his professor was, we know it was probably positive. We can infer or conclude that it was a positive first impression based on the information that he does state directly. He shook my hand firmly. He asked questions. He was relaxed and seemed interested. All of this equals liking the professor, even though we never hear the student directly say that he likes the professor. Okay, let's practice. Let's try to make an inference or a guess about what is going to happen in this picture. Take a good look. What do you see? What evidence is there that will lead you to make a certain conclusion or inference about what will happen? Well, if you guessed that the monster will most likely be stuck by the garbage collector's stick, wake up and attack him or eat him, you've probably made a good inference. So let's see, what evidence is there that leads us to believe this is what will happen? Well, we see that there is a trash collector. We see a monster hidden under the ground, his tail sticking up just a little bit here. We also see that the garbage collector is using a stick with a very sharp point on the end. We make an inference that he is going to move along until he sticks that sharp point into the tail of the monster, which will wake him up and cause him to attack the trash collector. This is an inference. No one has directly stated to us that this is what will happen, but using the evidence, we are able to make a good inference. Okay, let's practice and try to make another inference. Suppose the teacher, this doesn't look too much like me, does it? Anyway, suppose the teacher walked into the classroom and told the students, "Put your books away, put your notes away, move your desk away from the student next to you, and take out a pen or pencil and a piece of paper." What kind of inference could you make about what might happen next? I think most of you probably inferred or concluded that the teacher was preparing to give the students some sort of a test. The teacher did not directly state, "We are about to have a test," but based on the evidence, put your books away, move away from the person next to you, and take out a pen and pencil, we know all of those things are the types of things that would be used when a teacher gives a test. Listen to a student talk about a first impression. Take notes in your notebook as you listen. Then answer the questions. Do you think it was a positive or negative first impression? Why? What information from your notes helped you answer? Do you think the speaker likes Lee? Why? What information from your notes helped you answer? I remember the first time I met Lee. It was the first day of classes my freshman year. I was on my way to my history class, and I had no idea where I was going. He smiled and asked me if I needed help. I must have looked really lost. Anyway, he gave me directions to the building where my history class was, which I don't think I would have found on my own. After he gave me directions, he introduced himself and gave me a firm handshake. He wished me luck with my classes and then headed off campus. So he was probably late for his own class. My first couple of weeks of college were pretty difficult and lonely. I remember hoping I would see Lee again on my way to classes. About a month or so later, I did. I was eating lunch in the cafeteria. I waved to him and asked him to sit at my table with me and a couple of new friends. So maybe this is the kind of notes that you took. It was the first day of school, and the student was lost, couldn't find her way to history class. Lee smiled, asked if she needed help, gave her directions, shook her hand, making him most likely late for his own classes. She hoped to see him again. One day, saw him in the cafeteria, waved, and invited him to join her and some friends for lunch. Let's see if we can use any of this evidence to make an inference about the speaker's first impression of Lee. So, do you think it was a positive or negative first impression? Well, I think we can agree that we can make the inference or the guess that it was a positive first impression. And what evidence do we have to support this? How can we make this inference or conclusion? Well, we know from our notes that Lee smiled, he asked to give her help, he gave her directions, which probably even made him late for his own class, introduced himself, and gave her a nice handshake. All of those pieces of evidence lead us to conclude that the first impression she would have of Lee would have been positive. Do you think she likes Lee? Yes, of course she does. How can we make this inference? What evidence do we have? Well, we know that she waved to him when she saw him in the cafeteria, and she invited him to join her and her friends for lunch. In addition, she had been hoping to see him again. You wouldn't hope to see someone again unless you like them. So let's review. The listening skill we worked on today was inferences. Inferences are guesses based on evidence when things are not directly stated. We make inferences every day. Understanding how to make inferences can help with better listening and reading comprehension, test taking, and just understanding people better.